To get started just so we have enough time. I'm sure there'll be some questions for the panel. So thanks for coming tonight, everyone. Away rotations is a little bit intimidating at first, but I promise it's not as bad as it seems. So hopefully we can kind of help streamline what the process is like and make it a little easier. So I'll go ahead and share. I'm just going to give a brief kind of overview of the system, and then we'll go to the panel. Let's see. All right. I love it when it starts in presenter mode. All right. Totally good for everybody? Nice. All right, sweet. So my name is Hunter with the Pathways of PM&R team. Thanks again for every coming. Just gonna give a brief overview and then we'll kind of get into some of the questions. Kind of theme of tonight is VSLO or VSAS. So what is that? Basically, VSLO stands for Visiting Student Learning Opportunities, and it was formerly called VSAS for a different kind of acronym, but essentially this is the main kind of portal that programs do the visiting rotations through. But it is important to mention that not every school uses this. There are some exceptions. So I think it's important to kind of try to look into this earlier to figure out if your school you're interested in is using VSLO, or if they have a secondary kind of application. Um, so why do an away rotation? There's several reasons, to maybe explore a different geographic region that you haven't been to, or, when you're applying and you can kind of say that, hey, I came and visited this place far from home and really kind of shows that you are truly interested in, maybe moving to a different area. Or maybe to gain exposure to, a new area of PM&R or somewhere you're interested in. There's a lot of really interesting rotations out there, and you can do some pretty interesting and niche stuff based on your interest. Or I always think it's beneficial too to see like a different kind of platform and healthcare system and program setup. And even if you don't end up going there, there might be things you like about that program that you can try to incorporate in your program. And then the big ones I think building connections in the network, getting letters of recommendations for residency applications, and then one of the major ones is kind of trying to increase your chances to match a place you're really interested in. Some kind of considerations. These can be very expensive, especially housing. The applications themselves weren't terrible in my experience. I can't remember, maybe like $15 or $20 for each institution. But some of them do have additional fees, so that is something to think about. Um, and I will say, after in my experience, the majority of places you do away rotation, they will give interview invites, but it definitely is not a guarantee. And I definitely know some friends who did away rotations at institutions and didn't get an interview invite. So just to make sure you understand that there is not a guarantee. Um, and I do think it can be risky to do a away rotation at a place you're very interested in first, because at least in my experience, I didn't get a lot of PM&R throughout the first 2 years of medical school. So it may be beneficial to try to do like a warm up rotation before, go into a place you're really, really interested in. Um, and then being cautious, not doing away rotations during kind of the heavy interview seasons, kind of like right now in January, maybe. You can definitely still do it, but sometimes it can be kind of off-putting if you're requesting off, 4 or 5 times during the rotation to do interviews to other places. And then, I have heard a school of thought where, if you look really good on paper and your application is very complete, that it can be really risky to do away rotations. You may get matched up with a attending a resident you don't really kind of click with, and you don't perform as well as you want to. But as my friend Eric kind of once said, I bet on myself 100% of the time, and I think the reward is better than the risk. So some of the basics, it's kind of a wild, wild west. All the programs really have different release dates and kind of offerings. And, some of them are 2 weeks, some of them are 4 weeks, some of them are all inpatient, all outpatient, a mix. There's peds rotation, cancer, really hodgepodge of opportunities out there. And some of them start pretty early, maybe February, if not March, definitely. And then some of them are a little bit later into April and even May. So It's really all over the board and not standardized at all. So I would highly encourage you to try to look up the places you're interested in as soon as possible to kind of see what their timeline looks like. And you can do that if I think the schools give us the code for the VSLO website, and you can look up the schools on there, and I'll show you how. If not, you can always look at their website, and a lot of times it's on there. And I think one of the biggest keys is submitting your application as early as possible. I do think a lot of these are kind of a first come first base kind of service thing. But some do a thorough review, but a lot of times it's the first one to kind of get the applications in. So what are requirements? Again, vary all over the board. So these are three different schools. On the left column, you'll see, they want like a CV, they want a personal statement, transcript, letters of recommendation, board scores, really kind of thorough application. And the middle one, not so much, they only really wanted a transcript. So no personal statement, no letters of recommendation, and no CV. And on the right, you can see they just wanted a CV. So it does vary significantly between each school. So I'd highly encourage you to look at the schools you're interested in, and I'll show you how in a minute. So let's look at the portal. So this is kind of like the main dashboard, and it's kind of just, the home base, and you can kind of see some of the main stuff. And on the bottom left, you can see like personal information and make sure kind of everything gets completed. But looking at the actual kind of application, similar to like applying to med school, you enter in a lot of personal and biographic information and some academic information, such as, the mandatory third year court clerkships you have to do at your school. And then this is where you can start kind of picking, choosing, adding an elective that you're going to apply to, and then you'll enter in the documents for whatever requirements that institution requires. And preferences, so at least in my experience, most of them you kind of rank like, let's say you want to do July through September. You can rank like, July would be my first choice, August would be my second choice, September my third choice, and kind of give your preference of when you want to do them. But important to consider that not all schools are on the same timeline. So just because like you do a 1 month at one place, it might overlap with a second place. So be kind of strategic with the months and timelines that you're picking. And so how do you find electives? There's all kinds of filters. You can click on the find electives tabs, and if you just want to look at all PM&R, you can search by specialty, and they'll all kind of pop up. And throughout kind of the beginning of February, I think they start kind of really popping up for the next year. And you can kind of click, like each one will have a hyperlink, and you can click on it, and it'll have some more information with important dates. When can you start looking at it? When can you start submitting? When will they start sending out like acceptances? You can also see if they have like any other additional fees associated with the application. So our good place to kind of get some good information. And then also you can click on the learn more, and this will kind of show whatever the requirements are for the program. So this is where you can see if there is like, they want a personal statement like this one does, if you need to have a CV or a letter recommendation. And there's also like some just wildly variable kind of things that they want, such as background checks. And I know Shirley Ryan has like some like NIL thing that takes a couple weeks. So definitely look at these early because they take a lot of time. And then on the right, you can see the dates offered. There'll be like a drop-down menu, and you can see like each month that the rotations are offered. So kind of moving along to the documents, this is where you'll just upload, your CV, your transcripts and everything like that. And then you can kind of pull it into your application on the other tab. And then tracking, this is we'll see like after you submit everything, you'll be able to see that it actually went through, and you're kind of in the queue for them to review it. You can see there's under review tab in the application history. So once you get accepted, you can click on like the application history, and you'll see like it'll show like got accepted. And then there'll be some kind of post kind of decision logistics the school has to do, and then final status. I mean, this is everything is squared away and you're good to go. I will stress that it's very important to, once you get accepted, to go and withdraw your offers or your applications for the similar months at other places, because you don't want to get invited and then have to turn it down because you already have it booked. And I feel like that's not the best look. So yeah, that's kind of what the portal looks like. But what should you be doing now? I think, if you have access to VSLO, start looking at the programs you're thinking about applying to. If you don't, try to look at their websites and see if they need personal statements or letters of recommendation, that kind of stuff takes a little time. And I think over Christmas break is the best time to be doing that when you're not kind of worried about rotations. So if you need a personal statement, I would get started on it now, honestly, and be like kind of mindful of what the prompt is, because some of them are like, why do you want to come here? So not truly like a why do you want to do PM&R type thing. So just kind of try to address the prompts and put some time into it. I think this is a way you can really stand out because a lot of people just rush through it. But if you can really be thoughtful with, why you want to go to this place, I think you can help stand out. I would definitely recommend starting to put your CV together now while you have some time. Try to get a nice headshot, and the immunizations take a little while too. A lot of times you have to get like extra TB test and just kind of random stuff like that. So just look, there'll be like a standard immunizations form on there. And then if you're going to AAP, highly encourage you to try to network, try to meet some of the residents, try to talk to program directors and booths, and really kind of get your name out there so that when you submit your application, you can kind of send a follow-up and say, hey, it's really nice to see you at AAP. Just want to let you know I'm excited to have submitted my application. And I think this helps kind of bring it to the front a little bit. But if you're not going to AAP, that's completely fine. You can still do these things without actually meeting them in person. You can always send an email just to try to start getting to know the program, especially first and second year medical students. If there's any in here, the earlier you can kind of get your name and face kind of associated, I think the better. But after you submit it, be patient. I think, my first one I got accepted in April, and then the second one wasn't until August. So a long time in between, and a lot of crickets. And um, so don't feel stressed out if you don't hear anything for a little while. You can always, a couple of months down the road, send a follow-up email or say, hey, I'm still really interested. And then once the rotations start getting closer, really kind of getting ready to start prepping for them. Here's kind of the most common resources I've heard of. PM&R Pocketpedia, probably one of the most common. It's kind of a really kind of surface level, gives you good coverage of all PM&R topics. It's really easy to read through, short chapters, very high yield. I think it's very helpful. And if you kind of get through that, I think you'll do fantastic on the rotations. Cucurulo is a little bit more in depth. It's like the book that they use for the board exams, studying. Very dense, very thick. It's a toss up if it's necessary or not. I wouldn't say it's necessary, but if you're really trying to, push it and be, a super standout, I think it's helpful and you'll pick up some stuff that you may not get in the Pocketpedia. But it is a big kind of time commitment to get through it. I haven't personally used PM&R Secrets, but I've heard some great stuff about it. And then I did use the 3 minute kind of exam book, and I thought it was really helpful for just kind of getting some anatomy down and learning some of the special kind of maneuvers. And then APM&R knowledge now, I feel like it's something not a lot of people talk about, but it's basically like a up to date for the PM&R world. So it's super helpful, and you can really get a big overview of different kind of pathologies. And I actually use it a lot for when I was making presentations. So it's super helpful. Look up YouTube videos of shoulder exams, knee exams, etc. And then I'll drop a link. But Representation Rehab also has an awesome kind of PM&R exploration guide with a lot of tips for rotations. And then shameless plug for our PM&R Resource Master. I think, if you're especially into a podcast, basically we went through and all the common podcasts and broke it down by categories you can see on the bottom. So if you're doing a stroke rotation, you can come to the stroke tab and here's, any kind of podcast associated with it, brain injury, spinal cord, MSK. Really breaks it down nicely. I feel like it's a really easy kind of resource to learn a lot. And I'll drop the link for that too. Just a couple other links and resources. So this is like the AMC kind of main kind of VSLO opportunities if you have any deep questions that you're not able to find. And then Representation Rehab actually has a cool kind of thing where they've mapped out programs who have funding opportunities for those that are underrepresented in medicine and a way to kind of get some extra funding. And then housing resources. I use Rotating Room. I thought it was really good for the big cities, and you can find some fairly affordable housing. But if not, Airbnb, VRBO kind of works. And sometimes programs will give you resources as well. So yeah, that was kind of the main overview I wanted to do. So we'll kind of kick it over to the panel. Uh, I'll let everyone introduce themselves. I know We can start if John, you want to go first.
Hey, sorry about that. Hey guys, I'm John. I go to Chicago College of Osteopathic Medicine out in Chicago. And I did my auditions at Shirley Ryan, Rush, and Schwab or University of Chicago.
And then we got Amisha here with us.
Hey guys, I'm Amisha. I go to Texas A&M School of Medicine, and I did all of my rotations at Texas schools. So I did Baylor, Dallas, Southwestern, UT Houston, and San Antonio.
Nice. And Jordan.
Hey, I'm Jordan. I go to Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York, and I'm from Philly. So I did my away rotation at CHOP in Peds Rehab, but technically it was through Penn, but not really. So I could talk more about that when we get there.
Nice. And Eric.
How's it going, guys? I'm Eric. I'm a fourth year at Torrey University, Nevada in Las Vegas. And the auditions I did were UC Davis, UC Irvine, UCLA, and Sunrise Mountain View. So the program here out in Vegas.
And I don't know if Kate was able to make it or not. And then Preston texted me. He his flight got delayed, so he wasn't able to make it. But we definitely have an awesome panel. I'll go through kind of some of the questions that we got submitted, and then we can open it up. But I think something that comes up pretty often is, how many rotations should I be trying to do, and how many should I be applying to? So I don't know if anyone wants to try to kind of answer that first.
I can speak on this from a perspective of my school has a PM&R program, and it's very strong, very it's just been like it's a strong program. And so for us, we actually have two home electives, one in the Montefiore health system and one in more of the public health system. And we're pretty much required to do them. And so for us, it takes up a lot of time, obviously more so than, if you don't have a home elective. And so we're kind of encouraged almost not to do, or maybe just to do one, just because it's hard to fit it all in. So for me, I only did one, and it was really only because it fit in my schedule, but I know other people have other experiences, and also being in New York, that opens up the doors to like a lot of the New York tri-state area programs.
I can speak on the opposite side of that since I don't have a home program for my school. So our school kind of limits us to 16 weeks of a certain specialty. So that's not primary care. So I can only do 16 weeks of PM&R. So I think, you have to really know yourself in terms of audition, like your stamina, because auditions do take a lot of your energy and, having to put on your best face pretty much every second of the time that you're there. So I think 3 is a really good like a good number to have because you do want to get at least 2 letters of rec from a physiatrist and, and then have that last rotate audition be like kind of you getting the ropes of things or you trying to impress kind of your program that you want to go to the most.
I agree with that as well. I think 3 is a good number because you'll get to see a good amount of programs by then. And also it kind of took till the third or fourth one for me to start feeling comfortable and like understanding the flow of things. So yeah, I would say 3 is a good number to aim for as well.
Yeah, I did 4. I think 3 is solid. I think by the fourth one, I was getting pretty tired and just, the whole like doing interviews while also doing your auditions, it's a lot to handle. And so like Hunter said before, which is my train of thought is your bandwidth and your confidence in yourself in terms of how you can withstand, doing all these rotations in person. If you feel like that takes a lot of social, professional energy out of you, I think like 2 or 3 would be just fine. But I think if you're really confident in yourself and how you present yourself to others, how sustained you are in rotations, you feel like you give your best from day 1 till day 30. It's really about how much you can give in those moments. And I think learning, at a certain point, you'll get the hang of things. And so by the second one, you'll be more comfortable. So do the ones that you're really geared towards or you really are aiming for, like your top programs, maybe in your third or so one. Obviously, it's by schedule permitting, time permitting, but I think the best thing you can do for yourself if you really want to match at ABC program, your best chances is if you have either a connection, you know them well in some form, or you do auditions. It just heightens your chances at those specific programs. Overall matching, I think that can help you with letters of rec as well if it's before that late September deadline for ERAS submission. So I do think it comes down to a couple of factors, but I think if you have specific programs you really want to go to, doing more will help as long as you feel like you can do your best. Because I think for me, at least, I don't know what the others think, but I sometimes you get caught slacking or you feel like, by that third one, fourth one, you're really tired. But if you really feel like you can keep it up, then I think more favors you, but it also gives you more chances to leave up some vulnerabilities perhaps, or sometimes it's hard to just keep up that pace and work, that much. So it's definitely up to you guys, but that's what my thoughts are.
Yeah, I feel like those are all kind of really good points. And I think it does take a lot of energy in these rotations and not only just like showing up every day, kind of putting your best foot forward, but also there's just a lot to learn that I like, didn't get exposed to during third year. So, learning these physical exams and, learning spinal cord injury pathology, brain injury stuff, it takes a lot of time and energy. So I did 3 rotations at home and then did 2 away, so 5 PM&R rotations total. I feel like that was a little bit excessive. I think 3 is a good sweet spot. If you want to do more, that's fantastic. But I did feel like 5 was fun, but it was towards the end, it was getting a bit of a grind. Um, the next kind of question that was submitted is, how stringent do y'all feel like the application process is, and do you feel like it was, really competitive trying to get the rotations, or do you feel like, if you submitted early, you were able to kind of go where you wanted to go?
You can go first. I think for me, I submitted pretty much like the first or second day for those schools that I mentioned in the chat. I posted a picture of the places I rotated at pretty immediately. I think I just knew I wanted to get things over with, and I had things ready pretty soon after they were submitted. And I think, even I submitted days later, I could have definitely gotten what I wanted, but those dates that I got were also structured in a way that I wanted to schedule it in a certain order. And so I think I didn't get my first choice for some of these programs. And so I was really good about emailing the program coordinator and just saying, this is my preferred day. I know I got this scheduled. So I was really on top of that. I think that helped me really structure programs in the right order that I wanted to exceed in, and getting letters from certain places before. So I think submitting them as soon as possible, but you could definitely get rotations, maybe not in your preferred date, but who knows what happens because so many people cancel, I think, and change things around. So you never know.
I think I'm going to come from the perspective of being a spaz. So I'm probably going to be the minority in all of these things, but I really only decided to do one because it ended up fitting in my schedule. I applied last minute and I didn't hear back for a while. So I just assumed I didn't get it. And then I ended up getting it last minute. So then I had like 2, 3 weeks to like figure out where I was going to live. And it was like a whole thing. But at the end of the day, it did work out. I got the one that I wanted, but it was kind of a spastic experience.
Yeah, I kind of in the same boat with my audition rotation at Shirley Ryan. I feel like that's a rotation that I feel like a lot of people want to get, and so I was pretty neurotic about it. I had everything pretty much lined up for it, like all my letter I needed, my CV, my personal statement, and I submitted the minute it opened up. Once I got the email that it was open to register, and I got my first day. I know some of my friends or I know some people who did it also who didn't get audition rotations there. So I can't say if, being quick to it helps me, but I would rather be safer than sorry and, really getting the audition that you really want, if that's somewhere where you want to go.
Yeah, I think how early you submit matters, how well put together your application is, and also like how many dates you apply to. So for me, I initially just applied to like a very short window of time and I didn't hear anything. And then I started stressing and I started like applying to more dates and then I started hearing back. So I think if you do that from the beginning, just apply to a lot of dates and try to be as flexible as you can with your schedule. That'll help you get more, or it'll increase your chances of getting what you want.
kind of on a similar topic, like what all months were y'all applying for y'all's rotations? Kind of what was the time window for y'all?
I can start. I ideally wanted to do like June, July, and August. And so those are I literally did one program for 1 month, one program for the next, and another for the next. That's what I mean by being like really stringent. Not a good idea. Um, I think you should apply to probably from like June all the way through November and then see where you go and see what you get. But I think the earlier you do them, the better because later on you have like ERAS stress and interviews and all of that coming up as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really good point. And something I didn't think about is doing away rotations while you're trying to get all your ERAS stuff in is a very stressful time. So if there's like a time where you can carve out at least like, a week or two during the semester to be able to sit down and focus on that, I feel like was really helpful. Um, did y'all feel like there's any bias about like places that was maybe farther away from home that y'all are applying to, or do you feel like it was kind of fair kind of across the board?
I feel like that's hard because I feel like most of us all auditioned nearby our schools, I think.
Yeah. Mine was a little far, so I'm in Alabama, and I did like Mayo and Spalding, so I didn't feel like it had any bias in the application. But I think the keys were, getting the applications in early, and then also like trying to network with the program, get to know the program director or residents so that they know you, and that way when your application comes across the desk, I feel like it gives you such a boost, I feel like. And then another question, did I need like level or step two? No. I think, if you get it and you get like a great score, you can always kind of submit it, but definitely don't need it for the application. Um, what are like some things y'all felt like like the programs were looking for on the application?
I think that's also a hard question. But they're probably looking at making sure that you're really passionate about PM&R. So having like a good personal statement probably helps. And having a CV that's put together, they can tell when it's like last minute, a bunch of random things added on. So just showing that you're prepared. I also think having some sort of connection to the program helps. So if you've done like research with them, or if you know faculty there, you can ask them to put in a good word for you. Things like that can also help. But yeah.
And I think having a good why this specific program is also super beneficial. I feel like that's something they can easily see through if it is like really something you kind of put together last minute. So I think, thinking about it for kind of reflecting on really why you want to go there, like how you're able to get what you want from them and portray that to them in a genuine manner, I think will help also a lot.
All right. Did y'all only apply to, like the top two, three, four places that you're interested in, or did you apply pretty broadly and then just kind of see what your kind of worked with y'all's schedule and kind of how everything came together?
Yeah, I applied to the other ones I really want to go to, but also a few others that I wouldn't mind going to at some point. And I applied to like 7 or 8 programs, and I could only really wanted to do around 4. So I wanted to get, based on those month preferences, what I got of my top like 3 or 4 choices. So I think once I submitted pretty on time with all the others, like pretty much most of the places, at least 5 or 6 out of the 8 that I applied to, I received and offered for an away. And so I think, yeah, if you're pretty broad about it, they're really good about giving you an offer, especially if you're applying pretty early.
I applied to one program, one date, and that was it. And ironically, the only option there was peds rehab. And I was like, okay, like that's still cool. And now I want to do peds rehab. So kind of works out like in that regard. But yeah, so that's a different experience.
Nice. That is pretty cool to see a wide spectrum. Um, did you guys encounter any issues with doing like away rotations like during interview season? And kind of how did that look like for y'all?
I had to do that a couple times on my last away rotation, right kind of when the interview season kind of started. Honestly, I think they're all pretty cool about it. They all know this happens every year. And they literally tell you like if you have an interview, don't come to work. Like even if it's just a half day interview, like don't come, like focus on your interview itself. That's way more important. So I think it's nothing to be too worried about from the interview aspect.
Yeah, I had a pretty similar experience. I finished my last one like mid-November, and I had to do I think 2 or 3 interviews during that rotation, and yeah, everyone's super understanding. They're like, "Go, don't come back, take care of business." And even like on rounds and stuff, they're very understanding. Like the emails, you come up and you got to book them fast because the dates get full. They're like, take whatever time you need, book your interview, and I didn't have any trouble with that, and I haven't heard of many people that have. Cool. So I think that's most of the questions that were submitted. So we can open it up if anyone wants to, put questions in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and ask, fire away. So we can start with when did y'all take step 2 or level 2?
I took step 2 in May.
I took level and step 2 in June. Because that's how our school's curriculum sort of schedules us to take it.
I took step in June and then Comlex 2 early July.
I took step in April, and so I was gonna say that actually that was when that was when the application opened up, and so I remember trying to submit all of it during my dedicated, and I'm really glad that people had given me that advice to prep my personal statement and CV and like the all the immunization stuff, just like I had it ready to go, and so that helped a lot. So if you guys do take it in April, just be wary of that too.
Yep, I had the same exact experience. I did April, and my last rotation was a bit of a rat race trying to get everything together and step doing stuff. So yeah, I totally agree. Okay, many of the panels have touched on how it takes a little while to kind of get your foot going with the away rotations, but you eventually kind of feel like you're kind of gaining confidence. What kind of advice you'll have for, showing up for the first rotation to be most prepared?
I think that honestly, when you tell them they'll ask you probably if this is your first PM&R rotation, and I feel like it's just so different from all your other rotations, where you don't really learn much of it until you're actually doing it. So I think, having them known that it's your first PM&R rotations, I don't think they really expect much of you to know like what's their goal, are they appropriate for inpatient rehab or not. But I think, showing up to work every day, like really dedicated to learning, asking questions when it's appropriate, I feel like is a really good way to show up. And, following up on things. If you talked about something interesting during rounds one day, going home, reading a quick article about it, bring it up the next day during rounds or something, I think shows a lot of interest and really impresses attendings.
Yeah, John made a lot of good points. I think also for especially if it's your first one, see if someone has also done the rotation in like the fours in front of you or those who graduated. I think someone who okay, they did an audition there or their current resident there, get in touch with them and see what their expectations are. To my first ones, Davis Irvine, they gave me a booklet and materials to read on, so definitely just read on those. And everything that I was asked about or we talked about or I saw was in those materials. And so I think, especially if you have a 4-week rotation, the first week lends itself to like a lot of residents I talked to, you know, having more knowledge bank is obviously really nice, but it's about your growth. So they want to see how responsive you are to doing well from the first week to the fourth week. So I think that's a big thing. Like you can start from not having a lot of PM&R knowledge, but when they see you picking up things and really showing some hard work, I think that's the main reason why they have these auditions. Like you don't have to be a superstar at first, you know, we're not all like Hunter who knows everything. Just kidding. Well, you know, it's all about that growth. And I think that says a lot about yourself. And so I think it's okay not to have, superb knowledge, but I think having that mindset to, I want to learn, how can I be the best student, you know, to all these residents? And if you come off as genuine, it says a lot about you and, you know, how can I succeed in your rotation? What do you expect of students and especially successful students? And from that, that's a good question to ask your residents as well as your preceptors, especially people like the PD or assistant PD or other people in charge. I think sometimes students don't always express it, but I think that's something that shows them that you're really genuine and you really care. And I think that goes a far way. So don't be worried too much if you don't know that much at the beginning, but we obviously have all the resources here to get you started.
Yeah, I would definitely say check out some of those, books and podcasts and stuff is a good start. But my experience is, I show up and they don't expect you to know anything. If you do know something, it's more like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. So I definitely feel like it's a low pressure environment and across the board from everyone I've talked to. So, I think the things that they're mentioning are, showing up, being enthusiastic and wanting to learn is some of the most valuable things. So Mylan, you got a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask real quick. So, on the VSLO application right now, there's like the short bio. It says this section is optional, and you may wish to provide a personal statement or details about yourself that cannot be found in other documents so that host institutions can learn more about you. Do you treat this as like a full-on personal statement, or do you just do this as like a little short little bio as it says? And then if the programs ask for an actual like separate personal statement, then you put it there. Like, how did you approach the short bio section, or was that even on your application?
Yeah, I didn't put anything in there. I left it completely blank. I'm not sure if anyone else did it differently.
I also left mine blank.
Yeah,
I don't
I
think
Same.
put
I didn't even know that existed.
yeah, I don't think it's a super like important thing. But definitely if there is like a personal statement requirement, that's when you can really show your enthusiasm and interest. I'm not sure. Did Eric or Jordan, did y'all use that section? No.
No, I think they ask for a letter of interest though, like in the specific school, you know, second or application for a way. So I think they'll let you know.
Um, I guess we're kind of on this topic. I'm not sure if everyone did personal statements. Do y'all mind just kind of sharing a little bit about y'all's experience with the personal statement and how detailed it was, and did you use a lot of that from like Eris time and kind of how your experience was with that?
Honestly, I don't even remember doing a personal statement for this, but if I did, I'm gonna bank on I probably used what I had, my rough draft or whatever I had for ERAS is my assumption. But I don't know that my program, I don't think they asked for it. So that's, yeah.
I think for me, I used a really, really rough draft of my final personal statement. And it was fine. I ended up editing my personal statement like 5 or 6 times afterwards, but it was something at least.
Yeah, I started with my personal statement that I was planning on doing for ERAS, but and that's what I submitted, but it ended up changing a lot over the summer. So my final like ERAS personal statement was very different from what I submitted to VSLO, but I did start with like that one step.
Yeah, mine was maybe like 80% different. I feel like I learned so much on my rotations and really kind of gained more perspective about why I wanted to do PM&R and things I enjoyed about it. So it changes a lot, but I do think it's okay if there is a lot of carryover too. Um, When doing research on programs, like how did you go about kind of selecting where you applied to and kind of learning about them and differentiating kind of, what they kind of offer?
I think for me, talking to other med students who had rotated there and residents was really helpful. I was trying to get experience at least at one like super academic institution and then one more like choose your own path kind of institution because those both have different types of training. And so I think that's what I would recommend, just so you get an idea of what different types of programs are out there. But I think the best way to figure that out is by talking to people who have rotated at different places. So you know, like which ones are super into research versus which ones are more focused on like day-to-day clinical stuff.
Amisha made some good points. I think, when you're looking at programs, I think you have to kind of reflect on what you prioritize and what you're looking for in your experience. Whether that be a certain part of PM&R that you're interested in and you want to get experience in, or if location's a really big thing for you, or whatever that may be. So I think, looking back at what you're looking for specifically is going to be super important. And there are a bunch of resources out there that kind of talk about people's previous experiences at these programs. There's like a huge spreadsheet every year of, that whole application season that you can take a look at. But also talking to residents and other med students rotating there and seeing if they are able to match what you're looking for is really important.
Yeah, I agree with everyone else. I think one thing I maybe regret doing or not wish I did was maybe do an audition rotation somewhere somewhere I would like to live, but somewhere for like in the non-West Coast area. I think that could have been a good experience. I chose a lot of the places based on if I could honestly stay for free. So I either had a family friend or stayed at my own house. But I think in retrospect, especially because there's so many virtual interviews, it'd be a good time to just like go somewhere different. Like going to New York, I think I should have, in retrospect, I think I could have done an audition there or a couple other spots. And I think that would have been a good time just to explore an academic program in a new city, in a big city that really wanted to go and possibly open doors for interviews, especially if you're in a geographically opposite location like California. And so at the same time, I think I'm happy with the places I went to, but I think it shows a different kind of medicine, maybe like, regionally, it might be a little bit different. And so that just adds a full experience in med school. We pay a lot of money to do all these things. And so it would be nice to get a little bit more of a diverse experience and something I wish I did.
Yeah, I did mine because I wanted to do it there, so it was kind of separate from that. But I have been given advice from fourth years in the past. Since I am in New York, a lot of them had said do in a way outside of the state, so you see that like medicine can sometimes be completely, not medicine in general, but the way like hospitals are run and support staff and things are just different. Like they were kind of like, it doesn't have to be this way because New York is just notoriously known to be kind of like difficult. And so that was something that I also was like kind of thinking about. And I did get to see that experience. I mean, things were just so well organized and well run at CHOP compared to some of the other places that I've seen just being in New York.
Yeah, I feel like that's all perfect advice. I dropped the link to that spreadsheet that John mentioned with the caveat of this is all super anonymous and anybody can go in there and write stuff. So, sometimes people write opinions and you can take it with a grain of salt, but I do think there are some tabs that have some good info. You can kind of see, if a program, is kind of heavy and, inpatient, outpatient, procedures and whatnot. So a good resource to check out for sure. Um, for letter recommendations for the way rotation, is it recommended to get one from a physiatrist or can it come from anybody?
I would say physiatrist if possible. But if you really don't know any, if you don't have a home program, then maybe a field that's somewhat related to PM&R. So maybe like maybe a neurologist who can connect a little bit to PM&R or an oncologist who might be able to talk about like cancer rehab, or a sports medicine physician, someone who can really speak to your traits as a good potential physiatrist.
Yeah, I think that's the key for sure. Um, I the one I did had to have two, so I actually luckily had a physiatrist that I worked with kind of through the first year, so that was helpful. But I don't think you have to have a physiatrist. I think it's more important to have someone who can really speak about, who you are and your kind of character and your kind of work ethic and knowledge base. So I did an internal medicine person, but I think, if the closer to PM&R, the better. But I think it's more important to have a good letter writer. Um, for Stella's question, I let me know if this doesn't kind of hit the mark, Stella, but she was wondering about how do you went in choosing like prelim versus transitional year programs. Uh, I don't know that you do any away rotations for those specifically. I think that was more of like just a residency application thing. But I don't know if, did y'all have any considerations about advanced versus categorical programs when y'all are picking places?
I think since most programs are like 80% of them are advanced, so I think, or about that. So I think we do have to consider prelim and transitional year. So I think interpreting Stella's question, I think a lot of it was just location for me. What's easiest, least amount of moves. And I think places and areas I want to live in, so around Vegas or California, or around programs that I really liked. And so it was just kind of more about big cities, and that's what I want, and everyone's different. So I think more about, and in terms of rigor or anything, I would be okay with either one. Some say transitional year, they say because there's more electives and a little less medicine, a little less ward months, maybe it wouldn't be as much inpatient medicine. And then prelim, you'll have more, ICU months and medicine months. So it'll be really strong for inpatient. So that's also a consideration in terms of the two.
Yeah, if that doesn't answer your question, just let us know, Stella, and we can try to help out. So currently on VSLO, it seems like a lot of programs are missing, not like showing up, or the important dates are kind of outdated. Should I hold off on researching until like 2024? Does anyone remember like when it first kind of starts opening up? I can't off the top of my head.
I think for me, the earliest, like UCI opened like the first week of February, and I was a little bit thrown off because it was like very early. So I think if I could tell you guys, probably the end of January, maybe be prepared with like things like think about when you get your mass fitting and all these little things like immunizations and so on and so forth. But that was the earliest for me. I don't think any other program had it until like March 1st or something.
I think for at least for Schwab, they don't use VSLO. So mine was pretty early and I didn't know until like after the fact it had opened up. So I think if you don't see it on VSLO, I would just check their website and see if they participate in VSLO or not. Because I remember applying for my Schwab rotation in January. So that was like super early and I was thrown off by that as well. So I would say just check out their website and see if they do participate. If not, I would probably hold off until like February or so to take a look.
Yeah, I was just checking my email, and my school like gave us VSLO access starting end of January. So I'm assuming like it's not, you're not gonna be able to apply until then, slash things are not updated until later.
I'm trying to remember too. I feel like as like the February March kind of goes, like the programs will start popping up as they like I guess start accepting stuff. So just because you don't see it on, February 1st doesn't mean it won't be there on, February 14th. I think I remember like having to go back and check it pretty frequently to see when the kind of stuff is being viewable and opening up, which is a little bit of a pain. For the DOs on the panel, did you take step two in addition to level two? Do you think taking step two opened up more doors in terms of amount of interview invites you received?
So I took both of them. I guess that's kind of a hard question, since I did take both of them. And I have friends who only took one of them and they're doing just fine. So I don't think it opened up more doors, you know, per se, but for me, that was something that I wasn't willing to risk if that was a case in any situation. But other than that, that's all I can say about it.
I agree. I took both as well, and I think sometimes, yeah, you don't know what a program's what their guidelines are and what they require in terms of both exams. But I think as long as you do well and at least complex, I've heard people be successful just with that. So if you're feeling a lot of test anxiety and feeling like you're really not going to do well, or if you're passing or anything like that, then really don't need to take the extra exam. But if you feel confident, or at least it's hard to feel ultra confident, but if you feel like you're okay with test taking and that you're going to get an equivalent score as COMEX and you're doing good on your practice exams, then it leaves that question out the door, like, are they going to discriminate against me if I don't have it? But I think PM&R is pretty DO friendly, so I think having COMEX, from what I've seen, has been totally fine with a lot of programs.
Awesome. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask? Um, I guess, and unless anyone else has questions, what is maybe one of y'all's kind of biggest, take home tips or pieces of advice you would give third years kind of getting ready for VSLO?
I guess just kind of going off of what some people were saying in the beginning, like know yourself and know that if you're going to apply to however many, if you might feel burnt out and not fully 100% there and ready to like work and learn, it's not worth it. And that's okay. So I think that's something, because I originally wasn't going to do it since we do have 2 home electives. And I was like, I don't know that I can really like be on and with it. But then I kind of had a change of heart. But I think just like know that that's okay.
I think taking it like step by step, because there's so much that goes into it, will be helpful. So first figure out how many you want to do, then where you want to go, then everything that you need for all of those places. And then after applying, kind of figure out what you want to learn or keep in mind for your first rotation. So taking it step by step and not just like doing all of it at once, I think will be helpful, because it is stressful. It is a lot of new information. So yeah, definitely get started on it, but don't overwhelm yourself.
I agree with Amisha, you know, taking it piece by piece. And I think really being punctual with things. I mean, I think the earlier the better, honestly, for this, and making sure you get your spot, and kind of not having to deal with it later down the road and stressing yourself out. Because once you do it, you know, then you run into the struggle of kind of double booking yourself, and then you're in the situation where, you know, you have to pick one program over the other. And, you know, I would rather not put myself in the situation by being earlier than later.
Yeah, I agree with all of them being timely. I think for those who may double book, for example, you get like, school A and B, you get it in August, and I think the sooner you do it, then the sooner you can contact the program coordinator. And a lot of them are super flexible, super nice, super helpful. So when you give them more time and ahead, you'll be able to be flexible. Like, hey, if September opens up, can I do B program then? And that worked out for me. A lot of them were double booked for me, and so being on top of it, getting it done earlier, you'll see all your other classmates scrambling to find things and not able to get auditions at places they wanted, but those who were able to get them a little bit earlier, I think saves you some headaches down the road.
Yeah, I think those are all pearls. I think my advice would be, start early, start now, get the CV together. If you need to do a personal statement, start doing that while you're kind of have a little downtime and you're not, in the middle of a clerkship. And the immunizations were like the biggest pain in the butt to me. So if you can do that over the break, I think would be huge. But at the end of the day, I feel like it's stressful at first, but once you kind of get into it, it's a lot of fun. You're finally getting to do, these rotations that you've been waiting so long to do, and it gets a lot better, I promise. There was another question. I don't know if anyone in here is doing couples matching or not, but is there any couples matching process for like away rotations or any advice that y'all would have? I haven't heard of anything like that for away rotations. But unfortunately, I can't kind of speak too much about that from experience. Any other questions, anybody? What specific immunizations? The one that stuck out to me was the TB one. I don't know, was there any others for y'all that really had to go back and get?
It's like the same for med school, except like update your T-spot, or I mean your quantiferon gold.
Yeah, and
And I
like,
think the hepatitis B qualitative or quantitative was something also that's a headache for some people.
yeah. How recently did you need the quantiferin gold? That's a good question.
I actually did some of like I was worried because I wanted to make sure I got the spot that I wanted, and so and like I needed background checks and fingerprints and things that just like take time. So I actually submitted a blank document and then emailed the coordinator and said these things are going to be ready in like 4 days, like just so you know. And like they were like that was actually probably a good thing that I did. And then I uploaded my updated documents, and they were like really appreciative of that. So that way I could at least submit my application and get it in. So that's something you can also maybe think about doing.
That's a pretty good idea. I didn't think about that at all. Um, Specific question for Schwab. Because they pop up on VSLO, but when you click on their site, they say that the elective doesn't take visiting students. I don't know, John, do you know any more about that?
I don't remember seeing that when I looked, because I looked at their website and I knew they were not through VSLO. But I think if you go to their website, like their actual website, they'll give you further instructions there, unless they're transitioning to VSLO, so I'm not sure.
If you're ACLS certified, do you need separate CPR and BLS certs? I don't remember doing any crazy certifications or anything like that. I don't know if y'all did. Yeah, so I think you should be fine, Caroline, with whatever your school has. I will say, something I didn't have trouble with this, but there's something where like your school has to have some sort of like I don't know, connection with the other programs, your accreditation type thing. And sometimes if that's not there, it can be a bit of a process to try to get that put in place. I don't, did anyone have to do anything like that, or is everything kind of, I feel like most places have that kind of established. Um, John, I don't know, do you want to, did Shirley Ryan had like that weird NIL thing, didn't they?
Yeah, so when you're applying for Shirley Ryan, you have to get a certain whatever NIL number. And it's a whole like government process, I believe. So it takes a few weeks to do. So I think if you are interested in rotating at Shirley Ryan, I would do that sooner rather than later, because I think it's pretty variable in terms of how fast you get your number. But you're not able to submit your application to them until you get that NIL number for your application. And I think you use that pretty much your entire career as well down the road.
And can you do background check in advance, or do schools you apply to send you info about where they want you to go? I feel like the ones I did, it was basically like they already had it set up and I just kind of gave them my info and they kind of handled it all. I didn't have to like do anything separate on my end for that. I don't know if y'all had a different experience.
I had the same experience for the background check, but for the fingerprints, like when you're out of state and it has to go in state, like that ends up being a whole thing. Um, but usually but they sent the documents that they wanted me to have and like it was outlined, but if you're out of state, sometimes it can be a whole thing.
Yeah, we're getting close to 8, so just want to be mindful of everyone's time, but definitely appreciate all the panelists coming to spend time with us. And thanks for everyone to come out. I will upload this to the YouTube channel in case you need to like refer back to it. I'll drop my email in the chat. Feel free to any questions that come up. You can email me or get in touch with any of us. We're happy to help out all the time. And yeah, I think keep pushing forward. I think y'all are in a hard patch at third year, and kind of getting to the back half and getting ready for board exams and stuff.